On May 14, 2017, in this blooming season full of vitality, the Belt and Road International Summit Forum was held in the beautiful Yangtze Lake, Beijing, the capital of China. More than 1,500 representatives from over 17 international organizations and 130 more countries in the 5 continents participated in this grand event and made their contributions. Shining with unprecedented energy, the age-old Silk Road, which was once a showcase, has traversed history, walking into people's heart and marching toward the future. The Belt and Road is escorted by laws. China-ASEAN Legal Cooperation Center, CALCC.
A very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We are live again. Today we'll be discussing with our good friend from the Philippines. As you can see from the screen, let me do an introduction. On the right is Ms. Goh Xiangju, a lawyer based in Kuala Lumpur. We have seen her in the past episodes. As you can see, the gentleman on the screen is J. Patrick Santiago, right? So we call him J, and he's from the Philippines. Welcome to the discussion today. As usual, we'll wait maybe for about 1 more minute for more people to join us. For those who are just joining us, please help us to share this live interview or live chat with as many people as you can, so that more people will be able to listen and learn from this discussion today. All right. So yes, hi. So there are already some comments coming in. Thank you. Richard says hi, Xiangju, and he say hi, Jay.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi. So for those who have just joined us, feel free to type in your comments or even questions. Then we'll try to take the questions during this discussion today. This morning we had a discussion with a lawyer from Myanmar, and now 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Kuala Lumpur time, we're having this discussion with our friend from the Philippines. And today is quite a busy day for us, even though it's a public holiday. Later at 6 o'clock, we'll be speaking to another friend from Singapore. So it's almost like a marathon. Margaret says, good afternoon, everyone. Hi, Margaret. Margaret has been following our show as well. Thank you, Margaret, and welcome again. Now let us start. I think first of all, I'll invite the speakers to introduce themselves. We'll start ladies first, right? So we'll let Xiangju. Hi, Xiangju.
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hello, hi everyone in KL and everywhere in the world. My name is Siang. I'm a practicing lawyer from Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. And my practice areas is corporate and commercial with emphasis in companies law and real estate. I'm also the branding and marketing director of CALCC. Good to see everyone and happy Wesak days. Happy holiday.
All right, thank you, Xiangju. And I would like to invite Jay to say hello to the viewers online and also to introduce herself to the viewers. Jay.
Hello, thank you. Thank you, Tai Yong. Good afternoon to everyone. Whether you're from the Philippines or elsewhere in the world, you're from Malaysia, good afternoon to you. I hope that you are all well during these very trying times. I am J. Patrick Santiago. I'm from the Philippines. I am a qualified lawyer in the Philippines and England and Wales. I am with Kisumbing Torres, which is the Manila office of Baker McKenzie. I'm doing primarily arbitration, dispute resolution, as well as insolvency proceedings.
All right, great. Thank you for accepting our invitation to join this show. And I would like to acknowledge our viewers. Sandy Nguyen, watching from Myanmar. Hello, hi, Sandy. I remember you joined us in the morning session with a lawyer from Myanmar as well. Siangju say hi, everyone. I suppose Siangju is saying hi to the rest of the viewers. Rather than us, I say hello, Siangju. Chong Ting Fai is our friend from Singapore, and yes, he say hello to everybody here. All right, so let's start. The discussion today. Now we look at there are lots of news that we hear from the Philippines. At this moment, I've just checked. I always check before speaking to everyone. It's about 10,000 confirmed cases, more than 10,000, slightly more, and about more than 650 cases of death at this moment. And we have also hear a lot of the news outside the Philippines about the situation over there. So I'd like to hear from Jay, who is currently based in the Philippines. How's the situation over in the Philippines right now?
Right. Well, you've already read the news. The number of COVID cases in the Philippines, as you said, is more than 10,000 already. It seems quite dire. At the moment, of course, there's a lot of clamor for more PPEs, better healthcare services. But at the same time, companies are quite, in a way, struggling because we're currently in a community quarantine. Some areas, beginning May 1st, are classified as under the enhanced community quarantine, which is a stricter form of community quarantine. The rest of the Philippines, they are under general community quarantine. For enhanced community quarantine, that is essentially a lockdown. So you're required to stay at home. If no one is allowed to go out unless you are accessing essential services or purchasing essential goods. That means going to the supermarket to buy food or going to a restaurant to buy takeaway food. So those are the things that you can do. And as I mentioned earlier, before we went live, you cannot even walk your dog outside. So they're quite very strict on that. At the same time, I guess the inverse of that is what we can do. The inverse is the companies that can operate, the businesses that can operate, are only those that do provide essential services or essential goods. So these are supermarkets, restaurants. Other companies, other businesses are not allowed to operate. Laundry shops are not even allowed. Barber shops are not allowed. I'm not sure if you can notice from my haircut. I haven't had a haircut for almost 2 months now, so I apologize.
We have the same problem here as well. Same problem, same issue.
So that's what's happening. One important exception to the operations of businesses in the Philippines, and I think this is because it does employ a lot of people in the Philippines, and the Philippines is quite well known in this kind of industry, is the BPO, the business process outsourcing companies. They do continue to operate, but there are still some challenges in that respect because as a consequence of enhanced community quarantine, public transportation is suspended. So it's quite a challenge for these companies that are allowed to operate during the ECQ to continue to operate if their employees cannot go to their establishments because there's no public transport. So these companies will have to provide transportation services to their employees, and because they cannot really accommodate everyone, they would have to operate on a skeletal workforce. So these are some of the challenges right now that we are facing in the Philippines.
Right.
Jay, how strict is the community quarantine in over there? Because like in Malaysia, during our initial quarantine period, we are not allowed to travel more than one person in a car, and each person have to have a mask on as well. And we can only go to buy essential products in a radius of 10 kilometers in our residential areas. How is it in in Philippines?
In the Philippines, they actually are quite strict. I mentioned earlier that you can go out to purchase essential goods. However, that's only limited to one member of your family. So right now, what they do is that the local governments will issue a quarantine pass, and you have to. So you have this physical pass that you have to bring at all times when you are outside.
Oh, so
and
every
on the
household
way
has
to the
this
grocery.
pass. Every household
Yes, they're
has this pass.
supposed to.
Oh, okay.
Yes, they should have that. In fact, in some supermarkets, they will not even allow you to purchase anything there if you cannot show a quarantine pass. And they are also quite strict because these supermarkets are required to implement social distancing inside their premises. So you will see long queues outside the supermarket because they cannot just allow everyone to come in. And in these long queues, it becomes longer because even in queues, you have to apply social distancing.
Yes.
So it's quite stressful to really go to the supermarket. So when I go to supermarket these days, I make sure I buy stuff for the next that's good for 2 weeks.
I see.
Right,
Okay.
right.
And also, I mentioned to you earlier that they do check. The police would actually check. And I was walking and I was with my dog. I thought I was allowed to walk my dog while I am going to the supermarket, but apparently that's not allowed. Even if, in truth and in fact, I actually went and I just came from the supermarket. So they do actually stop you, ask you where you're going and where you are going. Yeah.
So are there any punishment for breaching this community quarantine order? What are the
there is. In fact, there is a law. It's called the Bayanihan We Heal as One Act. That is the law that was enacted by Congress in the Philippines to address the public health emergency situation in the Philippines. It's actually a penal provision. You can go to jail for it and pay a fine if you violate some of the prohibited acts under the law. And one of the prohibited acts there is that you violate policies of the quarantine requirements or mandatory requirements under the quarantine period during the quarantine period.
There have been some.
Yeah, and there have been some. Although I must say that the implementation is, although quite strict, they're quite lenient because there are first-time offenders. So it's not like it's the first time you do it, you go to jail straight away. So they do take into account that it's a new law. Not everyone might be aware of it. So the local government officials in the Philippines, we call the barangay, are tasked to really monitor the implementation of this quarantine. And sometimes they would do some form of punishment to the people that they catch, these violators, that are not necessarily either a fine or imprisonment.
Right.
So there can be there be some news. Yeah.
Yeah, we have heard about news that President Duterte issued an order to shoot those violators of the community quarantine. I have also heard about also watched the video. So this order, how is it implemented and in the Philippines?
I don't think that someone has been shot yet. I guess for someone who has seen him speak many times in the media, and for anyone who has had the chance to really see him speak, you know that he has a certain tone as to how he says things, and that does not necessarily mean that if you violate the quarantine, then you get killed. The context of that statement is with respect to this rally that happened. So there was a rally that was organized during the quarantine period, and obviously that's a violation of the law at the moment. And I understand from the news reports that the 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 rally became quite violent, and I think he was saying that on the assumption that if the violators become violent and became a threat to the life and limb of the police officers, then go ahead, shoot them if necessary. But that's the context from where he was coming from.
I see. Because from what you say it's strict, but on the other hand, I think the officers are quite lenient if you're a first time offender.
Yes.
So like what's happened to you?
But you cannot really even if there are instances where you think they would be lenient, I don't think I don't think that's enough for you to not comply with the law.
Yeah.
Because you'll never find out if this policeman who catches you applies things strictly on you.
Right.
So you have to follow the law.
Right. So when we say the enhanced community quarantine, you are still able to do the shopping of groceries. All right. Okay. In Malaysia, we have the movement control order, the MCO, and we also have the enhanced MCO, the EMCO, whereby the whole area is cordoned off with the barbed wires. So there's no in, there's no out. Yes, with the military holding guns, and the outsiders will deliver food in.
Interesting.
Yeah, so the version is
actually,
slightly different.
That has happened in some instances here in the Philippines. There is no there are no barbed wires. I don't think they have the budget for that. But but I think there was a time before this enhanced community quarantine happened. Before this all happened, there was a declaration of public health emergency, and there was a community quarantine at that time, before all of this formal declaration of enhanced community quarantine. So at that time, there were some small areas within Metro Manila where there were cases, and at that time they were still trying to contain the cases at that time. So they would cordon off a specific area within the city to make sure that no one comes in and out. But now, because of the enhanced community quarantine, everyone is not allowed to go out unless you're accessing essential goods and services.
Yeah, and here we have evolved to the new term called conditional movement control order. So that's on the 4th of May, which is Monday this week. Most of the sectors in Malaysia, we are able to start business and operate, but with the condition that you have to comply with lots of SOP, the standard operating procedures. But there is a situation that happened where the federal government says that we are under this conditional MCO, more relaxed, you can start work. But certain states in Malaysia say no, we are going to continue the MCO. So that looks like as though that's the difference between the federal and the state. I would like to seek your view. In the Philippines, does this happen in the national level, and also the mayor of each cities? Is there a different types of community quarantine policies?
In the Philippines, we have. I think this issue is relevant only because last May 1st, there was a transition of certain areas in the Philippines from ECQ, which is the Enhanced Community Quarantine, to GCQ. So GCQ is a more lenient form of community quarantine. So during that time, there were a number of provinces or areas in the Philippines that wrote a letter to this task force that is tasked to supervise the situation in the Philippines. They wrote a letter to this task force and they asked them if they can continue to do the ECQ in their locality. And I understand, based on recent news, that none of those were allowed, none of those were granted. So, but that doesn't stop the local governments to write a letter in the future in case the situation changes. So they would do it on a case-by-case basis. And
Right.
with respect to your question, if these provinces or cities can just go ahead even without the government's approval, they said you're GCQ, but they said we will proceed with ECQ. I don't care what the government says. Then they're gonna be in trouble because that's a violation of the Bayanihan law that I mentioned earlier.
Okay.
Bayanihan law, what does it mean in English?
Right. Okay. Well, it's the name of the law is let me just look at the exact term, which Republic Act that is. But let me see. Right. Just give me a second. The exact name
Sure.
of the law is Republic Act 11469. And the short term for it is the Bayanihan to Heal as One Act. Bayanihan is a term in the Philippines, which means you help each other. So we help each other to heal as one. So as a country, we heal from this COVID situation.
I heard that this act actually gives the president very, very wide power in this pandemic.
Right, that's correct. Although even before this law, there is another law that allows the president to declare a state of public health emergency. And once that is declared, the government, the president would have a wide range of powers. So I think what this law did is to just formalize and enhance the law, or enhance the powers of the president during this crisis. It does include a lot of powers that the president can do, but at the same time, it also provides for other provisions relating to subsidies, relating to provision of essential goods and services. And as I said, there's a penal provision to ensure that these policies are complied with.
Okay. Jay, it has been 2 months since...
Bayan also...
Yeah, Bayan is a nation in the Philippines. If you just say Bayan, it's nation.
Okay.
Bayan also means
Hi,
nation.
Sarah.
Thank you, Sarah. Hi, Sarah. Right. Xiangju, you were saying something?
Yeah. It has been 2 months since community quarantine is ordered. Do you think that is the case in COVID-19 cases in Philippines, is it contained already, do you think, or is it still hiking, or is it? Because I read on the news that that was end of April, like you have 1,100 health workers tested positive for COVID-19. And among them, you have about 20 doctors who died from this COVID-19 as well. Is it because of lack of adequate protective gear, or do you have shortages, that's very serious shortages?
That's a very politically difficult question.
Okay. But okay.
Well, what I can say here is whether we are spiking, whether we are flattening the curve, I think there's a lack of information as regards that. Only because I think there is still not a wide. I think the public testing, or the testing among everyone, everyone is still not widespread in the Philippines.
Okay. All right.
I don't think they have sufficient kits to really test everyone, so they cannot really assess yet at the moment the exact gravity of the situation in the Philippines.
Right.
I see. Okay. And I also understand that Philippines is one of the largest exporters of medical workers in the world. So there have been order to not to let these medical workers go out, right?
There was, and that was very controversial. That was very controversial. I just can't recall now if they've changed their mind as regards that policy. I do recall that there was an outrage from that, because of course you're depriving people of their means of living. They already have their contracts. They're supposed to fly out already to work. but then the government stops them. I think there was something was already done about it, but I'm just not sure about the latest.
Okay, all right.
Right. So for the businesses under this community quarantine CQ, where they are not able to operate, what's the legal position? Whether the employers should continue to pay the salary or wages of the employees.
Okay, that's in terms of labor.
Yeah.
I just have to give a disclaimer that I'm not a labor lawyer. Okay.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
but from the different issuances of the Department of Labor regarding this, they do encourage the employers to provide other flexible work arrangements. They also suggest that maybe first apply forced leaves, that individual employees can use up their leaves first, rather than doing a retrenchment or a layoff of their employees. So that is currently what's happening. They also suggest rotation of workers, telecommuting, work from home, and I think for some companies that's working. But not, of course, not everyone would have the resources to work from home, and not all businesses are I think compatible with work from home arrangements.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. So for those who are working from home, are the companies allowed to do like, for example, pay cut?
Well, that is, I think, that's part of the suggestion of the Department of Labor. So instead of retrenching, you can talk to your employees and make them agree that you pay them a pay cut, because Philippine laws on labor are quite strict. So under the law, there's this such thing as no diminution of benefit. So you cannot really give them a lower amount just because these things happen. So what is suggested is you have to talk to your employees, discuss with them the situation, and come up with a mutual agreement as to how the salary can be dealt with.
Right.
Oops.
So okay, we'll bring him in.
Okay, sorry.
Hi, Jay.
I thought you were lost. Okay, we're back. So, but that that wouldn't stop, I think, companies to do a retrenchment if necessary in the future. Because let's face it, this COVID-19 really took a toll on the businesses. And in fact, we are even foreseeing the worst economic crisis since the Great Depression. So definitely retrenchment can be inevitable in certain industries. And to do that, there are also a number of requirements under Philippine law to be able to validly do that. There should be it should be because you want to prevent losses. You can't just stop because you were given the opportunity because it's COVID. You have to prevent substantial losses. There should be a notice to the employees and the Department of Labor. You have to pay separation pay. The criteria for choosing the employees who will be part of the retrenchment, the criteria should be fair and reasonable, and you should do this in good faith.
Okay.
Yes. I think it. Yeah.
Did the Philippines
Sorry,
government
Sanju, you were saying?
did the Philippines government provide any subsidies to the companies or businesses for these wages, to subsidize the wages?
Okay, for subsidy of wages, I'm not aware of. But what the government is doing to help the businesses is that they required the payment of commercial lease of these businesses to be suspended. So during what they required is, if the rent is due during the ECQ period, then from the last payment date, supposedly during the ECQ period, you have 30 days within which you're not supposed to pay the rent. And then whatever was accumulated during the ECQ period, you can pay that within the next 6 months after the ECQ was lifted.
Oh.
So there are ways, there are things that they
Right.
are doing to alleviate the situation. For the workers, the government is providing subsidy for the poorest of the poor. They do provide quite minimal subsidy, but still, it's better than nothing. So they are doing that. Also, the rent. They've also asked public utilities to suspend the bills. The statement of accounts of these public utilities can be suspended. So they do try to do their best, but insofar as budget is concerned, as to whether they would subsidize the employee salaries, I'm not sure, and probably not.
This delay of the rental until 30 days after the ECQ, is it pursuant to a specific law or by the federal at the federal level? Is
If
it
I'm
the
not
same applies to all?
mistaken, yes, I think it's under the Bayanihan law, if I'm not mistaken.
Right. Wow. Okay.
How about the subsidies for the poor? Is there any, what is the government's arrangement for the poor? Any subsidies of food distribution, things like
Yes,
that?
the subsidy is also provided by the Bayanihan law. There are some relief goods being given out, but that is primarily being done by the local governments. So the mayors that has jurisdiction over their cities and locations, they are primarily in charge in doing that.
Okay. All right.
Okay. All right. So for those who are watching us live now, if you have any questions, please feel free to drop that the comment column. We may not be able to answer all your questions, but we will try to with our this opinion or views of the speakers. Now, the next question I'd like to ask Jay is about the future of the legal profession. With this COVID-19 pandemic coming in, do you foresee that a lawyer's life will be more challenging in the future? Because we have spoken to many countries, many lawyers from different countries. Some expect that there'll be more cases after this COVID-19, perhaps due to the disputes in terms of a contract and commercial, and also even from family law. I think the divorce cases is expected to be on the rise. But some say that those transaction-based business, for example, property will be or corporate transactions will be lesser. So how do you see this the future of the legal profession?
Currently, I can say that law firms in the Philippines do have their austerity measures at the moment. So some law firms have, I think, deducted some salary from their employees. Some have required them to go on forced leave. Some have required them to just go to the office for 3 days instead of 5 days. So the law firms have been affected by this financial crisis, by like the COVID-19 crisis, and I'm sure the ensuing financial crisis. So that is currently being felt by the legal industry in the Philippines, and plus the fact that courts are closed in the Philippines. So litigators who usually earn based on their appearance fees and drafting of pleadings are not earning at the moment. So they are really affected by this situation. What I can say is that probably in the future, what this is doing to the legal industry in the Philippines is that it's pushing the digitalization of lawyering in the Philippines. And I only say that because recently the Supreme Court, which regulates the practice of law in the Philippines, has issued a number of issuances relating to online hearings. But that only includes, but that only covers at the moment criminal cases or cases involving persons who are deprived of their liberty. So those who are currently in jail. So I think that's a good start because I think for the longest time, I think the court system has been quite antiquated. In fact, we have only recently amended our rules. It actually became effective just last May 1st, the rules on civil procedure. And thankfully, this time, the court allows the filing service of pleadings and other submissions by email. So that's finally we can submit pleadings by email in the trial court level. So that's the timing, I think, is good because especially now people don't want to go to court to really file something. You can already just do that online, of course, with the court's permission, because there are instances when the court might not want to allow online filing. But at least that's what's pushing the legal industry right now to go with the digitalization of the practice. Another example I can think of is on the training of lawyers. Recently, the Mandatory Legal Education Committee has allowed an online platform to provide legal training, because we're required to have mandatory units, 36 units in 3 years. So before, there were no rules whether you can do it online. Now you can do it online. Recently, there was a seminar that I attended. We talked about the revised rules, and for the first time, they did it online. So that's actually very good. So that's what it's doing in the actual practice. Now, with respect to the types of cases in the future, definitely we will be seeing issues relating to breaches of contract because of force majeure, impossibility to act, or the parties did not contemplate this situation. And under Philippine law, there are about 3 grounds that you can invoke that I can think of that can relate to the difficulties brought about by COVID-19. In addition to that, I think there could be some issues on restructuring in commercial transactions. And that's what we are already seeing in our firm. We do get a number of inquiries about restructuring. And when I say restructuring, the mode of restructuring is quite broad. So there's one where all they need to do is renegotiate all of their contracts. There's another one that all they want us to do is review all their contracts and think about ways for them to terminate some of the non-essential contracts that they have. Or there are some inquiries on what they can do because an important supplier in their supply chain is experiencing financial difficulty, whether they would just loan an amount of money. Do they need to bail this out? Do they need to just absorb this company in a mergers and acquisition transaction? So these are they're basically looking for ways to lower their costs at the moment. So that's the type of restructuring. They're looking at, do they think they need this much physical space now that they know that they can actually work offline? So that would lower their rental fees, the rent that they pay every month. So that's the restructuring bit. The other bit is if you're unable to restructure, you're going to be bankrupt. You're going to be insolvent. So there could be cases on insolvency in the future, especially after this when courts open. And we have had some inquiries regarding that as well, whether it's better to just file an insolvency case rather than be liable for future debts that they think they couldn't pay anymore. And as regards the group of companies as a whole, whether it's okay to just have this member of their group of companies go down the drain because it's just gonna pull down the entire group. So these are some of the cases that I foresee that will be in our courts in the future.
Is there a general interpretation whether this COVID-19 is a force majeure event, or it depends on how is it drafted in a contract?
Interestingly, the law, under Philippine law, force majeure is actually provided in our civil code. So it's not like English law where you only have the doctrine of frustration. It's not written. In the Philippines, we have it in the civil code. So we do have very specific requirements before this provision can apply to your situation. How unfortunately, whenever I think about this force majeure and I connect it to COVID-19, the more I think that it's not really the COVID-19 situation that is the force majeure. It is actually the ensuing governmental acts that is the force majeure that was unforeseen. So it's really the governmental acts. Because it's the governmental acts that tells you to stop operating. It's the governmental acts that tells you you cannot do this or that. Public transportation is suspended, and so the company cannot operate. So it's really the governmental acts that is the proximate cause of the inability to comply with an obligation.
Yes.
So that's quite interesting, but also at the same time, if you look at jurisprudence in the Philippines, how the courts have interpreted this a similar situation, because currently there's no Supreme Court ruling. In the Philippines, we have jurisprudence, but what you can cite in cases is only Supreme Court decisions, not the Court of Appeals or the trial court decisions. You can cite them, but they are just there to convince the court, but it's not binding. So it's only Supreme Court decisions that are binding. So currently, there's no Supreme Court decision that really deals with a pandemic at the moment. So I'm not sure how courts will do this. There have been some cases before that spoke about financial crisis. Like during the 2008 financial crisis, there was one Supreme Court case that dealt with it. And there's also one in the 1980s brought about by, if you recall, there was a people power revolution in the Philippines, and after the people power revolution, there was some financial difficulties for some companies, and the economy was down because of all the troubles back then. So there were grounds raised to the Supreme Court saying that they cannot comply with their obligations because of the financial crisis, and these Supreme Court decisions said, based on these Supreme Court decisions, the financial crisis is not a fortuitous event. So it's actually quite difficult. So if eventually there's a financial crisis coming out of this COVID-19 situation, I'm not very certain in that the Supreme Court would be that open in interpreting the financial crisis as a form of fortuitous event or force majeure for purposes of non-compliance with obligations.
Right.
I think in Malaysia, we haven't thought of force majeure from that aspect. In Malaysia, we are always arguing about whether the pandemic is considered a force majeure event and how it's drafted in the clause, right?
Yes. Because in Malaysia, this force majeure is not stated in the civil code that you have it in the Philippines. So it all depends on what is drafted in the agreement. If the agreement says in the event of pandemic, epidemic, government administrative order, or you say government act, so long as you spell out inside, then the lawyers will quickly pick up the document and say, hey, force majeure. So that's the position we have it here. So and you are right.
You don't even have to put it in the contract. You don't have to put it in the contract because the law expressly allows it.
Right.
Okay.
So here in Malaysia, we have to put in a contract specifically. Otherwise, you are not able to rely on this the concept of force majeure. Of course, there's another one. It's called the doctrine of
frustration.
Doctrine of frustration. So yeah, but the level is slightly higher because it has to be impossible to perform. So, but of course, you look at the financial crisis. Is it impossible to perform, or is it more expensive to perform? So that you got to distinguish that as well. so or the delay and all these legal questions will come into play. And you're right. I think for the corporate world, a lot of clients will contact the lawyers to actually review the contracts and see is there any way out by looking all these clauses.
Mm.
Now, I just want to ask you about this the digitization among lawyers. It seems to be the common trend after speaking to many lawyers, and this is the only way moving forward. The dinosaur and the traditional way of practicing, I think somehow we really have to move on and to adapt this new way of lawyering, as you say. Now, in Philippines, it's video conferencing among clients and among lawyers. Is it something common prior to this COVID-19, or everybody started to do this now?
I think in general, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear
Okay,
you.
yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I think in our firm, teleconferencing, we do have video conferencing facilities in our offices. They're not quite common, but we're familiar with it because clients
Yes.
from elsewhere would request it, and we do need the facility. We do have the facilities for that. But in general, I think in the Philippines, no. I've known lawyers right now that cannot even operate an iPad. It's the first time they are using Zoom,
Okay.
using these kinds of technology. So it would take a while for them to really adjust to the new normal, as they say.
Mm.
Yes. So, what's your view about that, Xiangju? The new normal, digitization of legal industry?
I guess that's something that we have no choice, but we have to learn and have to manage. So, and also at the same time invest in some softwares and training to come up with this digitalization. So, yeah.
And in my
All
practice,
right.
it has not been quite an issue because I do arbitration. And in arbitration, video conferencing is quite normal. Video calls
Yeah.
are quite normal, and everything can be sent by email, so it's very seamless. But for the practitioner in court, for the court practitioner, it's quite difficult because they are quite restricted to physical service, registered mail, and they're not
Sure.
quite used to emails.
Right.
I see.
So the other question I have is about this. Any, I mean, you mentioned about this Bayan Nihan. Is it is there any other act, or Bayan Nihan is so wide that gives all the powers to deal with this COVID-19? Um, yeah,
So what
Jay.
what happens is we do have the Bayanihan Act. That's the law. But in
Yeah.
addition to the president, there's a task force. It's called the IATF. Let me see the. It's called the. What does it mean? It's called the IATF. It's the task force that is tasked to monitor the situation as well as issue some recommendations for the president. So they provide us with the omnibus guidelines recently as to which areas would be under ECQ, which areas would be under GCQ, what they can and cannot do under certain situations, and which depending on which industry. So they would issue this recommendations, and then what will happen is the day after, or maybe the evening, the same day the guidelines are issued, the president will adopt that.
Right.
And so it's really the IATF guidelines that people are really focusing on what they say, because usually what the guidelines say, what the IATF says, the president would usually just say yes to it.
Right.
But in addition to all of these issuances by the IATF and the approval of the president, there are also there are requirements for various agencies to issue implementing guidelines. For instance, there was the omnibus guidelines, and they say other manufacturing companies can only operate under GCQ. So it's not clear what are these other manufacturing companies. So the next day, I think 2 days later, the Department of Trade and Industry issued a memorandum circular clarifying that statement. So that actually gave me a lot of headache, a huge headache, because there seemed to be some incompatibility between what is provided in the guidelines and as also what the DTI actually issued. But yeah, you have to grapple with all of these issuances from the national government, from the IATF, from the president, from the regulating agencies, from the local government units, meaning the mayors, the governors. They're all intended to be harmonized together, but there are some aspects that sometimes they can be ambiguous or still make them inconsistent with each other.
Right.
Okay.
I just checked. IATA stands for Interagency Task Force.
Yes, but there's still something after that. There's another one, slash something.
Slash
This
something.
is the slash something. Yeah. Interagency Task Force on Emerging Infectious Diseases. So it's the IATF EID.
For infectious disease. EID, yes. Emerging infectious diseases. Yeah, I think the task force will tries to harmonize the regulations. Sometimes we see it here as well. Sometimes this department will announce certain rule. Department will come up something that is kind of conflicting as well. So yeah, all right. So I think originally we say I think Xiangju informed me that that the discussion is about half an hour, but we are way past 30 minutes. But this is usually what happens because it's quite interactive and people ask questions, and so we like to ask more from you. Now
Jay,
I liked yeah.
What is your experience by working from home? What do you think? Is this prior to this? Do you have flexible working hours, or have you been working from home a lot, or is just through this?
Well, interestingly, as a matter of law or policy, the government quite before the pandemic happened issued I think that's a law that allowed flexible working arrangements. And the reason for that is because traffic. Yes, on flexible working arrangements, and that is because of the traffic in Metro Manila. So people were complaining about the traffic, and so they were saying, "Why can't we just work from home? We need this, blah 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 blah." And so the government responded by saying, "Okay, fine. The employers are encouraged to allow employees to do flexible work arrangements." And then the COVID-19 happened, and now I think it's perfect timing, even if in a very unfortunate event. But in my firm, we've been doing flexible work arrangement for a long time. So if you are, I think, a more senior junior lawyer or a senior lawyer and a partner, you can have 1 or 2 days per week work from home arrangement. So I've been quite used to it even before, but I still used to prefer working in the office because it's much more interactive. You have everything you need there. You're not crammed in your dining table. So had I known, I would have bought a very beautiful office desk and a very ergonomic office chair here at home. Because right now I'm sitting on my dining table, on my regular chair, and my desk is my dining table.
Okay. All right.
Okay, so I would like to invite Xiangju to make a concluding remarks about the discussion today.
Well, first of all, very happy to see you again, Jay, and good to know that you're doing well and been very busy, although this is under this CQ. Well, I think digitalization, like you say, it's something that we have to adopt, whether or not we are prepared going forward. And well, I just hope that the situation in Malaysia, I think, and fingers crossed, I think the situation is getting better. The numbers are looking okay lately, and I hope that in the Philippines, it will become better very, very soon. Yeah.
All right, thank you. And I would like to invite Jay to make a concluding remarks about our discussion today.
Right. Well, thank you, Xiangju, for inviting me here. Tai Yong, it's a pleasure
Yeah.
to spend the afternoon with you. Always always good to discuss these things with you, and always good to talk to another person while I'm in quarantine. So this is very, very welcome. Well, I think
Right.
the Philippines, I think, has a good set of laws in place to deal with the situation. It's all just a matter of implementing it seamlessly, and for people's the cooperation of the population of the people to really make sure that we triumph over this situation. But I'm pretty sure that we will come out of this as a better people, more advanced. I hope so. More aware about how to deal with situations like this. We learn from this so that in the future we can deal with this in a better manner. That's all. Thank you.
Yeah, have you
Okay, thank
considered
you.
to keep your hair long? To take you don't have a barber open for you now.
No, no, no.
Is the
Sorry for
Chihuahua
the
going to make
hair.
an appearance? Is the
Right,
Chihuahua
right.
going to make an appearance? Where's the Chihuahua?
Oh, yeah, my Chihuahua. I think
Yeah.
he's sleeping. He's doing an afternoon
Sleeping?
nap.
All right. Next time then. Okay.
Next time.
Sure.
Okay. Again, thank you, Siangju, for joining us today, and thank you so
Welcome.
much, Jay, for spending this evening. Yes, I think the purpose of having this discussion organized by the China ASEAN Legal Cooperation Center (CALCC) is to catch up with our friends, people whom we have met before, the lawyers, the legal practitioners around the world, where we ask first of all say hello to everybody, say how's everybody's doing, and also to understand the landscape, the regional landscape in each of the country. And I think this session is about I think 17 or 18 episodes. So we have been doing this many
Wow.
times. So we have a few more to go, and I find it's a quite useful and to hear from you all of you the speakers, and to also explain to us the situation on the ground. So thank you so much. For those viewers who are still online now, thank you so much. We are so glad that this series we have good followers and followers watching us live as well as watching the video later. So this will be a video that we have it on our Facebook and also on our YouTube in the future. So years later we'll think about the COVID-19 law series, and the lots of material here. All right. So I hope and I wish everybody to stay healthy, and more importantly to stay positive. I think looking at Jay and Xiangju now, I think both of them are very positive, and despite this COVID-19 pandemic, I think the legal profession got to change and to adapt to the new changes. My name is Teh Tai Yong, and we are signing off for today's session. And thank you for the viewers who are still watching us right now. All right.
See
Okay.
you
Take
again,
care. Bye
everyone.
bye.
Bye.
Bye
Bye,
bye.
Bye.
everyone. Bye.
Oh.